Hello, and welcome back to the Rise and Recreate podcast. This is a space for the people who feel called to build a meaningful life, to step beyond the life they were handed and consciously recreate the life that they're here to live. Because at some point, we all face this moment, the moment where we can either stay who we've been or we can become who we're meant to be. So what happens when you choose to follow curiosity before you have proof of where it will lead? And how do you continue to recreate yourself even after decades of success? Today's guest is someone who has spent more than 20 years inside the world of film and television production. Marie was most recently an associate producer on the Netflix series Sweet Magnolias. And earlier in her career, she worked in New Zealand as the coordinator of Peter Jackson's motion capture studio, helping bring the cinematic worlds to life from beyond the scenes. She is now CEO of Megawit Media, Inc., where she's focused on building frameworks for community storytelling, helping people and communities share the stories that might otherwise go untold. Her journey is a very powerful example of what it means to evolve with your work, to follow the threads of what fascinates you, and to recreate yourself again along the way. So I'm so happy to have you here. Marie is a dear friend of mine, and her journey is quite fascinating. So I would love for you to just introduce yourself and tell us a bit about where you are currently in life.
Sure. Yeah. Thank you so much for having me on your podcast. It's so exciting. Um, yeah, where I'm at currently in my life, I'm just wrapping up our 5th season of Sweet Magnolias for Netflix. And this year, I got to step into associate producing. So this was kind of like a level up from, what I was doing throughout the last 5 years, working very closely with an executive producer, basically his right-hand woman, making things happen, staying really organized on our producing team. But this year, just really owning that producing piece and holding my own on the team. So that's what I'm currently doing. But my professional world of working in film as a service industry has always been a little bit different from what I do personally in my own life. And with my new company, Megawit Media, I'm exploring what it looks like to build frameworks for community storytelling that act as communications to bring our local communities together and to provide a sense of cohesion in the way that we view our locals. So this is a very, very new venture for me. This is my new experience of like recreating my life once again. And yeah, I have all the fizzy feelings of having to step into like uncomfortable territory, lean into skills that feel like super new and green, even though they're backed by some really good, long-standing experience in film and television and storytelling. So yeah, that's where I'm at right now.
I love that. Thank you so much. So you mentioned recreating your life again. So
Yeah.
let's travel back into your past and tell us about one of the first couple of times where you felt like you were living a life that wasn't quite meant for you and you decided to shake it up and do something different.
Yeah. Okay. Well, in getting ready for this podcast, I kind of did this little inventory and traveled back in my life. And I actually landed in this moment where it was like, I was saving up for film school. This is one of my first jobs, really, like one of my first real jobs. I got this little gig doing sort of customer service telemarketing at this big call center that had opened up on Vancouver Island. And in order to get from where I was in Ladysmith to Nanaimo, where this call center had opened, it was the most economical to travel, in a carpool. So I started carpooling every day with this kid. Like realistically, we were both kids at the time. And just slowly over the course of traveling with him to work, he sort of revealed to me that he was selling drugs. And so very slowly, I got integrated into this sort of like we'd stop on the way home and like drop off drugs to different places and different people and different sort of communities. And for me, this is so different than the family life that I grew up in, like very wholesome, very kind of like, it had its issues, but like for the most part, just this really contained, wholesome family unit. And suddenly in this job, I was traveling and seeing like all kinds of people from all different walks of life participating in activities that had seemed like very distant from my own reality. And over the course of time of getting to know this young man who I was carpooling with, I saw that, he's selling these drugs, but he'd have this like wad of cash. And this one day we stopped off at his house and he brought this big wad of cash in and gave it to his mom, who was like disabled, maybe in like not able to kind of like care for herself. And it gave me this like real moment of realizing that, oh, there's this whole world that exists outside of my reality. Like there's this whole nuanced world where it's like, we're taught like, okay, drugs bad, people involved with drugs bad, and then you like, I'm this young woman and I'm just getting this view of like people coping, people surviving,
Mm.
good-hearted people forced to do certain work in order to take care of the people that they love. And this is a hugely pivotal moment in my own story because I realized that when we get curious about stepping outside of our comfort zone, nuance is revealed to us, love is revealed to us, people and their nature is revealed to us. And I think I got a little bit captivated, fascinated by how quickly you can transform and recreate your life and change, like how quickly you can be presented with a new reality if you just want to know, if you're just curious enough. So this moment in my life kind of like came up and it sort of transformed like my desire to peer into little spaces.
Mm.
And this becomes a theme in my life, So I won't make this like a boring resume type thing, but I've recreated and changed my life so many times. I've had so many jobs. I did chase film school and I've always chased this kind of umbrella of storytelling because I've been really attracted to it. I feel like maybe my soul is invested in people's stories and human nature. But I've detoured so many times because I had to open these doors and I had to step outside of whatever my current comfort zone was to go and take a look at what's going on at, a different reality. So I have a number of different, pivot points in my life. I think for the people that are listening to this, there's going to be like a couple of different people, right? Like there's a moment where you're like, you feel stuck in your current reality and taking that step to make a change is like scary and you don't want to leave that comfort zone. And then I think you're also going to have people that I relate very deeply to who are kind of neurodivergent, neurospicy, and they're just like, hell yes, and they'll throw themselves in and change all the time. And I quit becomes more of a mantra. That's sort of been my thing, like the power that comes from an I quit, the fire that gets lit behind I'm moving on to something else is also going to be a story, right? So I think, just speaking to both of those types of people, I think it's like, we get in with society, we get this idea that we have to remain contained, that we have to be able to like really quickly tell people who we are by giving them like the nugget of what it is that we're currently doing, right? And it's like, everybody wants to have an umbrella, like a zone of their genius, a thing that they can communicate to the rest of the world. This is what I do. But I think socially, when we kind of define that, we also, create this sort of fear of stepping outside of whatever that definition is. And sometimes you really have to step way outside of it so that you can get a little bit of a test on, am I in the right zone? Is there something else? Um, So yeah, I've been very defiant about defining myself with any kind of career so that it doesn't hold me back from being able to like throw myself at something totally unrelated to what I'm doing.
Right.
Yeah.
Right, and that's so true because so many people do just put themselves in boxes, and from what you just shared with us, it sounds like curiosity is the key to escaping the box that you put yourself into.
Totally.
And
I actually sometimes joke around with people that, like, if I had to define myself and I had to tell people what I do, I think I've just been chasing a PhD in curiosity this whole time. You know, like that's what I want. Ultimately, like on my deathbed, I want somebody to be like, "You are Dr. Curiosity. Congratulations, Dr. Wit. A PhD in curiosity. Great."
I love that. So share with us some places this curiosity has taken you.
Sure. Yeah. So, I mean, I started out, working in film, doing all kinds of odd jobs. I've worked in the props department, I've worked in locations, these kind of like on set jobs that are really demanding, demand a lot of hours and have you traveling everywhere. But probably one of the biggest, like, pivot points for me is Weta Digital, which is, like, this big animation studio, owned by Peter Jackson in New Zealand, came to town. They came to Vancouver to shoot a Planet of the Apes movie, one of, like, the newer ones, which most people have seen, the ads for. But they were doing the first one of those new Planet of the Apes, and they came to Vancouver, and I was like, "Ooh, I wanna get on that show." And then I was like, "What department's hiring?" And it turned out to be this department called motion capture. And I was like frantically looking around trying to figure out what the hell motion capture is. Like, I had no idea. And I was just like, I got to get on this motion capture team with this, like, Australian team. And I got hired as a motion capture body technician, which is essentially like a production assistant that helps people get into these motion capture costumes and, scale their body and make sure that the markers are on all the right, motion points on their body so that the cameras can pick them up. You sort of wander around with actors changing their battery pack out and like it was like so much fun. I like that moment when I believe that our souls sort of like know what our purpose is, and like there is no need to like figure it out, right? There's just these things where it's like you throw yourself into situations and you see how closely it resonates to that feeling of like, "Ooh, this is fun. I love this. I want to be doing this. I want to do more of it," And that's how you kind of figure out what purpose is. And I was like on set, I was having so much fun and I was really in my element and I just lost track of being observed. I had that feeling of like everyone else's idea of me is gone and I'm just here and I'm doing this technician work. And by the end of the show, I was like, how do I go to New Zealand? I need to do more of this. And I was like, I'm just going to ask if I can go. And I'll never forget, I was out on the water sailing with my dad, and I got this call from Dan, who is the motion capture supervisor at Weta in New Zealand. And he was like, they're going to offer you a job and it's not small. It's like you ask for the right amount of pay and like this isn't an entry level position. And I was just like, holy shit, this is now it's on, you know? So they relocated me to New Zealand and I worked at the studio for a couple of years. Um, and then I got called back to Canada because I was proposed to and my partner didn't want to live in New Zealand. So I came back and I got married. And, but yeah, like that is, that's a wild trajectory change when, I started in that position not having a clue what motion capture was. And by the end of it, I'm like coordinating the department in New Zealand. And it was some of like the best memories of my life being there. And some of the worst too. We won't get into that, but yeah, it's like, it's all of it, right? Like that's the full spectrum. I won't inflate it beyond what it was. It was like epic on every level. And yeah, so the pivot point of coming back, it's funny because later divorce is another pivot point for me. But that job was quite interesting. Um, it's like throughout film I've had this kind of love-hate relationship because as a storyteller, I find myself close to the creative industry. A lot of people will have this experience too. Like I hear this all the time. It's like you're so close to the creative industry, but you're not the creative. And, when I got involved in film and I got involved in like, film school and stuff like that, it was like I was the creative. I was putting myself out there as the creative. And all throughout, I've had like these amazing little moments, but I've always been, learning the administrative side, the business side, the practical side. And so my creative skills haven't really had a chance to bloom within the creative or within the film industry. Um, and yeah, I find that it's like every time I'd start this job, and then I'd have this sort of like love-hate relationship, and I'd be like, I gotta change. Like this isn't I drift from that initial butterflies feeling of like, this is so close to my soul. And then it like the parts that weren't close to my soul would sort of overtake the experience. And then I'd be like, I got to open a new door because like I got to refine what it is, the essence of this thing that makes this me and that makes me glow. You know what I mean? So, at various points I took breaks from film. And one of the breaks that I took, I moved over to the island, which is where I live now, Vancouver Island. And I was like, okay, it's just going to be something completely different. And I signed up for this like little work program that the government had put on where like my wages were kind of subsidized. So it kind of gave, like I didn't have experience, but it kind of gave this employer this opportunity to like hire somebody who didn't really know what they were doing and get like a good deal on it. So I went for this book publishing job, which was like, building this company. It was a startup, building it from scratch. I was the third hire. It was a self-publishing company, and it was just as Amazon was releasing print on demand. So this was like right at the crest of the wave of like you can print books as needed instead of doing massive thousands of copies runs. So this makes it possible now for authors to self-publish their work and put a book out there without needing to go through a traditional publisher. And I just thought, hell yes, this is crest of the wave. Like I want in on this. This is so good. Again, butterflies, right? Like, ooh, what is this? Let's go open this door. And so I jumped on. We built the company up to about 700 clients. I became a senior manager of client marketing at this company. I was writing manuals of instruction, meeting with authors. I had a production manager who was on the senior management team with me, Caroline, and her and we were just like building a vision, and like we were thinking maybe we could become an on-ramp for people to go from self-publishing to traditional publishing. What if we acted as like this cool little filter and created an awards for self-published books? Like we just had this huge vision. The company wanted to just be a self-publishing book company and make a lot of money. We were like, no, we're going to be, so ultimately the alignment wasn't there and this wasn't a sustainable experience. But again, the fizz, the feeling, the soul, the purpose. It was just like it was electrifying to build a company and see it take off, and to be surrounded by such cool people. I still know some of the people I worked with in that publishing company, and some of the people we hired are like good friends of mine still. So that was just so cool. That was a break I took from film to open up the publishing door. And then I took another break, after New Zealand. I was like, I really feel like I never got a degree. I never got education aside from film school. Mm-hmm. And I was like, I want to do psychology. Like, I want to go back to school. So I applied. I got into UBC, University of British Columbia. And I was like, I want to do research. So I found this lab. I found this lab at UBC. And I was like, oh my goodness, they do motion capture. Like they use face capture to like, track people's eye tracking and all of these things that were just like sort of close to what I had been doing. But I was like, this lab sounds rad. So I just booked an appointment with the lead investigator and I was like, hi, I'm going to like research assist for you. So I got into this lab and I started doing research and, doing psych research. And I got really into virtual reality and augmented reality. And I was like, we can use it to do these social experiments, and came up with this study just looking at like how people perceive the outside of virtual reality when they're in a headset. Like, do they pay attention to their social surroundings still? How much of them is paying attention to what's happening on the outside? And so we put people in these headsets and had them do this like dancing tutorial thing out in public. And we monitored to see like if people were in a closed space where they weren't being watched by the outside world, did they dance more or did they, like, were they still self-conscious? So, this research was really fun. It was like kind of speaking to novelty in virtual reality and the novelty effects and the social effects of being in a headset. And like our lab was kind of involved with Samsung and Microsoft and these like big companies that were getting into this kind of technology. And so I ended up getting to do this amazing keynote speech of like talking about the research that I had been doing. I like, don't forget, I'm not a researcher. I'm an undergraduate student with like scholarship money and just like sparkle. Like I was just so happy doing this work. So these are completely unrelated. So I know I'm long-winded telling you my resume and my weird experiences, but like there is something related in every single one of these, even though it's not like, okay, it's all film and I've put myself in this box, this category of like, I'm a filmmaker. No, I'm a filmmaker. I'm a book publishing consultant, researcher, marketer, communication specialist. Like I am all these things, but it's like, actually, what it is when do I sparkle? Like, I can
Yeah.
sparkle in a lot of different environments if you throw me in. If I trust the fizz, if I trust that, like, weird feeling where I'm like, I'm scared about this, but at the same time, let's do it. That's the thing. That's the through line through all of these experiences.
That I can see that so clearly actually. And what I was gonna have you touch on was something that I think is extremely profound, and it's a different way of looking at purpose. And purpose is following that feeling of what lights you up inside, not one thing to define yourself as. And you can see that so clearly through the journey you just shared with us. And so I think this could be a huge aha moment for people listening who've had a different way of looking at purpose to be like, wait
Mhm.
a second, I was looking at this all wrong. And so I would love for you to speak on almost like the stories we tell ourselves, right? Like the story of no, purpose is something that I need to define myself by. It's something I have to find, it's something I have to search for. And you're here to rewrite the narrative and say, no, it's actually a feeling that you follow. So
Yeah.
for somebody listening who is like, I want to believe this now, what would you tell them?
Yeah. Oh my goodness. Well, the funny thing is, like, I still struggle with this because it's asked of you, like people will be like, what do you do? And you're like, what do I say? Like
I
half the
sparkle.
time I'm like, do I tell you about when I sold composting toilets? Or do I tell you about when I was a baker's assistant and confused salt for sugar? Like, I don't know what do I tell you about who I am? I'm a book publishing consultant, storyteller, narrative designer, associate producer, administrative octopus. Like, I don't know how to summarize myself, and people ask for it. And so that's where it gets really confusing. Like, how do you say I'm a sparkle chaser? Like, really, that's what I should be saying. Like, I just trust the fizz inside my body, and that's led me to all kinds of crazy situations. And what would I say to people that want to like get well, what would I say to myself? This is what I've been saying to myself so much over the last little while is like, it's okay not to define yourself. Like
Mhm.
really, really define yourself. You can define yourself in different, situations and different contexts as needed. Like in certain communications, I'm 100% an associate producer. In other ones, I'm an executive assistant, and it's just like in the context that people need to know about you, you get to define what those parameters are. But I would say, like, This is like kind of cheesy quote that everybody knows, but I feel like it's everyone's favorite quote from Steve Jobs. It's like, you can't connect the dots in the future. You can only connect the dots looking back and in the past. So you have to trust that all the dots connect somewhere. And that has like stuck with me for so long that it's like, yeah, make the changes, make the pivots, because every time that you try something new and it fails, you've just got more information about what it isn't. You know what I mean? And every time you try something and you succeed, you're getting really like familiar with the feeling of like, this is exciting to me. I like this, I want more of this. And then those might drift too. And you might have that sparkle for a time and then it kind of drifts and you're like, well, why isn't it the same? Like, why doesn't it light me up the same way that it did? And it could be that the context has changed, and it could be that the initial spark you thought you'd found in there, but actually you needed to go and be more involved creatively, or you needed to have like more connection with people, and the environment changed or something. So it's like you're an information finder, you're a seeker of like the data that confirms what your soul is like resonating with. And that's okay. And I would also say to people, like, it's okay to find the umbrellas in life, like when I say I'm a storyteller, that can have that's such a far-reaching umbrella. Like I'm a storyteller. And in this context, I'm an associate producer who helps people tell those stories. And in this context, I'm a communication specialist who helps people communicate their book to the world. Like there is storytelling in all of these little pieces of my life. So it's okay to just look for the big umbrella. Storytelling, photography, journalism, even psychology, therapy, and this type of thing. It's like anytime that you're in a role or a position where the context and the stories and the conditions are constantly changing, but your job stays the same, those are great things that you can pack a lot of variety into, you know? So,
Absolutely. And we're
yeah.
not here to just be the output of what it is we produce. And I feel
No.
like a lot of times that's what the questions are about. Like, what is it that you do? What is it that you do for work? What is it that you do for
Yeah.
people? What is it that you do for fun? And
Yeah.
it's like, well, I'm just this lovely little spirit inside of a human body living my best life and following my sparkle. And that should be more accepted.
Totally.
I love that so much. So there's a couple of things here that I feel like for people to follow their sparkles, sometimes you have to break out of the societal boxes also that we've been put in. Like you should
Yeah.
just find one career path and stick with it. And a lot of people have been programmed to believe that. So it's a lot of societal program breaking to be able to follow a life or to live a life where you are following your sparkle. And the other part to that is also the fear that you have to feel when jumping into the next new thing. So I'd love for you to talk about that a bit of how you were able to say, no, I disagree with what society says. And two, I'm able to feel the fear and do it anyways.
Yeah, and this is the key, really, because you're getting close to resonance in your soul work when the fear arrives and it's loud. Like, was there fear in throwing myself at book publishing? Yeah, a little bit. But was that role like, did it scare me in a way where it's like I just couldn't bear to see myself fail at it? No. And this is the thing that I'm getting to now, because I realize that being a curious person, trying a lot of things, pivoting a lot in your life, that's one thing. You want to explore, you got to give yourself an opportunity to see what it is and what it isn't. But there's also it can be a dancing around the thing. You know what I mean? So, if I look back, it's like right before I went to New Zealand, I started working on this documentary project. It was like something I GoFundMe'd. I got all of my family to pitch in a little bit of money to go and do. And I took a team of like it was like a crew, the four of us. And we traveled north into the sacred headwaters, and we started filming with a really lovely man who was revitalizing a dog sledding tradition in his uh in his lands, like in indigenous territory of the Taltan Nation. And I remember, like, I was out on the dog sled, and I was on the ice, and I was in the middle of, like, pure nature, like, northern Canada, like, it'll get ya, it's real wilderness and cold. It was in the winter, and I just couldn't have felt more myself, and I look at this project as a complete effing disaster. Like, it's almost a trauma at this point because I never finished the project. I got really twisted up about what it meant to be a white girl in Indigenous territory telling stories that weren't mine to tell, and I really overthought the plot. Like, it was like I did a disservice to the community because I was so wrapped up in what it meant to be this person in this context. And it's just something that I look back on and, like, I regret so, so, so deeply. But it was also a moment where the fear was so overwhelming because it mattered so much to me, And, like, for me, it's like, have I been dancing around the fact that I'm supposed to be telling stories and helping people tell their stories for all of these experiences, Have I been
Mhm.
tiptoeing closer and closer and closer to the epicenter of what the fizz means, And as you get closer and closer and closer to it, you do feel more intense fear because the stakes are higher. Like, you might not, you might fail. And failure at that level, like failure in that epicenter hurts. Like,
Mhm.
those are wounds that I'm repairing still, but you have to keep going. And because that is part of your mission, is to understand what the fear is there to communicate to you. The fear is there to tell you this is really important that you get this work done, and yeah, putting the fear on the back burner, especially when you've had a failure, like people have failed businesses, but they know they're an entrepreneur. People have failed at, writing books, but they know they're a novelist. And it's like, okay, this is the whole thing. This is the whole mission, is just to start to settle that fear in your body and just realize, like, oh, this is a message that I'm supposed to be doing this work, you know?
Mhm.
So with Megawit Media and what I'm doing right now is like, 2026, we log in and it's like every post that I saw in January was like 2026 is the year of analog. And I was like, what does that even mean? We're all getting off Instagram. We're all gonna get in, like, off of the digital socials. I don't think
Yeah,
so.
right. Nope.
Not gonna happen, like maybe, but maybe we all want that and we're craving connection. And I just started to realize that, like, we want to have digital presence and we want to have digital communication, but it's so funny how we speak to such a broad audience when our locals are right here in front of us. And whenever you get a story that pops up in your feed and you're like, that's my hometown, like that person's like here, they're looking at restaurants and things and shops and people and stories that are like, actually, I could walk down the street and experience. That's
Mhm.
a really profound thing. And so for me, it's like, how do we tell those stories in a really captivating way and make people feel like, hey, I know something now more about my community that I didn't know? And how do we get those messages out to people? And for me, it's like, I just booked an interview with a woman that I'm gonna go and film, and I'm making documentaries again, and I'm getting back into this, like, this epicenter, this space, and holy, am I terrified. Like, wow, I wake up and I'm just like, I don't know if I want to go and film. I don't know if I want to go and do this. And I'm just like, this is so cool. Like, this means something to me. So I'm just gonna forge forward, trusting my skills, looking back into, like, the history of what's lit me up, and to, like, really know that I have enough data now. Like, data collection phase is over. We are doing it.
Exactly. But
Yeah.
looking back and seeing all that you've experienced, all that you've overcome. I mean, you did mention that you flew back from New Zealand where you were living a dream of working in this massive production and you moved back to get married. But then you also mentioned that that didn't work out. So, like, when
Yeah.
big things like this happen, that in the moment feel like a failure, but in hindsight, you see was a huge jumping point for you.
Yeah.
I'd love for you to speak to that of how it feels in the moment, but trusting yourself enough to know that somehow it's for you.
Yeah, I mean, Vipassana, I feel like was a huge part of this for me, like for making this for understanding it and making it land. We consciously bring the past with us, right? And we're remaking these moments every time. And it's like, um, you know, you do want to like look back and understand how the dots connect, but really what you're doing in the day is the day. And it's not about the past. It's about what's right now. And you get to recreate yourself right now, independent of what's happened, right? And so you might have a history of failures. God, I have mine. I told you one of them, failing to deliver that documentary. It's a huge failure of mine. I also started a business that failed, crashed out so hard that I lost friends over it. Like people like failure is it's part of it, unfortunately. Like I've really had to like realize that those failures happened. They happened in their own moment, in their own era, with the amount of information I had, with the like knowledge I had. And they wouldn't happen right now. Like I wouldn't fail to that degree right now because more than just that has happened since those moments of my life, right?
Mhm.
Just like, yeah, I got married. I also got divorced. And if I got married again right now, I wouldn't get divorced for the same reasons because that's incorporated in me now, and it's like, it's one of these really great, important things that we have to settle on is just understanding that we're dealing with the moment before us. And it really is independent of everything that's happened before. The only reason why the past is involved is because we choose to bring it with us and we choose to consciously like bring it into the moment with us. But we don't necessarily have to do that if we stay present and we just say, I'm just going to sweep what's in front of the broom. You know what I mean? Like, I'm here to do that. And it's like, what's in front of the broom right now is setting, like, being okay with the fear of being present and still taking an action and still setting the meeting and still showing up with a camera and just deciding like this could either be great or it could be terrible and like I'll learn something and there will be future moments and they will be independent from this as well.
Absolutely. And it's through the feeling the fear, doing it anyways, showing up that we learn and we grow and we experience. And it also could be some of the greatest moments of your life. I still have fear before I show up and lead a podcast. And I'm just like, do I want to do this? Do I want to do this? Then I get on, I have the conversation, and I'm like, oh, thank God I did this. I love it so much.
Totally.
So it
Totally.
really is feeling the fear and just doing it anyways. And so you've mentioned Vipassana and coming back to the present moment, and you mentioned not bringing the past into it. It goes for the future too. You thinking like, okay, I'm starting this business. Here's all of the things that could happen in the future, may not happen in the future. And so what advice would you give people for in the moment, really setting down the past and the future?
Okay. Yeah. I mean, the future we have to plan into, like, we have to have a sense of where it's going, but we also it's such a trust relationship that we have with the future because we really don't know what's about to happen, and as we have all experienced, plot twists just come out of nowhere, you know what I mean? So you can loosely plan into the future, you can, like, project into it, but ultimately, again, you're just dealing with today. You're literally just dealing with right now. Right now, the 2 of us, we're just dealing with, do our computers have enough battery to get through this? Like, can people hear us on our microphone? How do we feel this is going? And then after this, like, now we'll switch into the future. After this, we're going to shut down our computers. We're going to go on with our day. We both have a sense of what that's going to look like. I'm going to hold my newborn nephew and smush my face into his face. Like, I hope all these things happen. I hope. But right now, we just sweep what's in front of the broom. We get through this
Mhm.
conversation. We hopefully inspire some people to like make a move in their life that's a little closer to what their heart wants and maybe like reaffirm for ourselves that like all of the fucking fear that is there when we try to do things is like worth it, right?
Yeah.
And we just carry on, like, but just right now what's in front of us, and even take it to that place of meditation where you're just, if you need to, remind yourself what the present moment is, just breathe, just become conscious that you're breathing. And that will always return you to like where you are in this very moment. And that's all life is, just made up of all of these little tiny fragments all pieced together to give us a continuity of who we are, what we want, we can change that at any moment. They're all
Absolutely.
independent from one another. That's the beauty of it.
Absolutely. And so it sounds like through this beautiful thread of what has been your life's journey, you've had this very intuitive sense of tuning into your body and really letting that lead the way. And a lot of times I think people get very caught up in their head of the what ifs, what should I do? The stories they tell themselves. What advice would you give people of like getting out of the head and into the body and being able to first identify what that fizz feels like for you,
Yeah.
'cause sure, it feels a little different for everyone, and then how to lean into the trust of trusting that.
Yeah. I have friends that really have communicated to me like, "I don't know what I'm here to do," and I'm just sort of like, "Yeah, you do." Like, you just don't need to announce it to the world and put it in a box and like present yourself as I'm a master of this or that or whatever. But like we get up each day, we have these instincts towards what do you like? It's funny, I was just speaking to my partner about this last night, and I was like, we were talking about gratitude and how it's hard to find sometimes, and I think, like, gratitude and purpose and all of these things, they're big concepts, but they're byproducts. Like, even happiness is a byproduct of behaviors that we take that produce those experiences. It's not something you can go and just, like, chase down and nail down and pin down. It's like motivation, inspiration, um all of these huge concepts, gratitude, like these things, they're byproducts. And so we were talking about gratitude, and we're like, well, what's like the unit? What's like like minutia unit of gratitude? And it's like, oh, I like this. It's
Mm,
like you wake up and you're just sort of like, you know. This bowl of yogurt's great. I like this. That is the micro unit of gratitude. Because if you're tuning in a lot and you're like, I like this, that filters into a sense of, like, when I wake up and I have something that I like, I notice, you know? So
mhm.
noticing is this, like, unit of gratitude. It's also unit of purpose. It's also unit of happiness. And so I think sometimes we get tricked out because we're like, how do I produce purpose in my life? You don't need to produce purpose. You just need to notice what you like. And
Yeah.
it can be tiny, tiny little things. Like eventually that grows into like more feeling based things like, oh, I like it when my partner looks at me like that. I like the way that I feel when I can step out into the light in the morning and like, you start to be like, "Oh, I really like the way that I feel when I craft, when I use my hands or like when I'm speaking to someone of this nature or when I'm participating in this group event or when I'm running down the boardwalk." And it's like you like that and that grows and noticing those things just grows and grows and grows until finally you're sort of like, "Oh, I like this so often that it feels resonant. It feels fizzy." And I get the fizzy feeling because I just like it never dies off. Every time I participate in the world in this way, I like it.
Mhm.
That's what the fizz is to me. And there are times where like in order to have that feeling, you have to do things that you don't really like, like it's not a pure thing. And so it's recognizing that like, oh, if I put in this hour, then I get to have that feeling, you know.
Mhm.
But yeah, these are the units of I would say purpose and happiness and all of these big concepts. They start with these little like building blocks and anybody can do that. Anybody can wake up and just be like, I'm going to notice today when I like something.
Yes. I love that because I've been asked a lot, like, how have you lived so many lives in this lifetime? Like, what
Yeah.
are you doing? And for me, it just come down truly to just following my curiosity and my joy. That is it. And it seems so simple, but it takes a lot of noticing. And sometimes that curiosity and that joy does lead you down a path where duality exists and you are going to feel the fear. And in your story, the way you started it with this curiosity of the carpooling and really being shown other lives in this world and oh my gosh, there's a different reality living literally 5 neighborhoods down from me.
Mhm.
And you being so fascinated by the stories of community and how it can be so different all within the same town. And that has become this beautiful full circle moment for you, where
Yeah.
now you are going out into your community searching for these stories. And so I would love for you to just speak about how you're feeling right now with this creation because and like how it feels to nurture a new creation.
Mhm. Yeah, I mean, excited. I'm and gentle too. It's kind of like I'm recognizing like I've had my failures. I know how those feel, and I know that fear is there to protect me from how hurtful it can be to like fail at something that you want to succeed at so badly. Um and so it's just kind of like really leaning in this maturity, in this maturing. But I love the way that you said full circle because what it really affirms for me is this notion that it's always in you. It's always
Mhm.
been in you. It always will be in you. Like these things, it always comes back to what it originally wanted to be. You know what I mean? And so it's like you don't have to search outside of yourself for the thing that you're supposed to do with your life. Like it has always been in you. And whether you dance around that or whether you have to take like 900 jobs to figure out, like to narrow in on triangulate like what it is, what it actually is, or you've done one job and you knew and you've committed it to yourself, you know, you've committed yourself to it since the get and you've just become a master of it. Like that's an incredible story as well. But however you get there, it's always been in you and it always will be. And that's really such a cool thing to realize that it's like I don't have to work so hard to figure it out because it's always been here. I just have to trust. And I
Mm.
have to be really gentle now with myself when I go into like making these things. I'm not throwing myself at the whole project at once. I'm literally like focused on doing one successful interview, bringing my camera and documenting it to the best of my ability, and then seeing where it goes from there. And I just really feel like, you know, you don't bite off the entire project at once. You start with something that makes you feel afraid, but that you feel you can master. And then you go and you get that done. And all that does is promote confidence in you that you can do the next piece. Right. So it's approaching with the maturity of like, you know, the impulsiveness of my youth of like moving from thing to thing to thing to thing has settled into like, oh, there's a lot of wisdom in sticking with and going slow and being methodical and trusting the experience that you've developed with that feeling in you that's a spark. So yeah.
I
That's
think
so
this is
true.
also very profound for people who are wanting to start their own thing, start their own business, start your own podcast, whatever it may be, is the nurturing it in the beginning and taking the pressure off of it. Because I
Mhm.
think that's where a lot of us put too much pressure on it and then it gets squished and we just say, oh no, we're too overwhelmed and we don't do it anymore. And
Yeah,
like your analogy earlier of staying in the present moment and just what's in front of the broom, this flows so beautifully into creation and what it is you're creating and just focus on the one task you can do in
Mhm.
front of you and then see how it unfolds and it will unfold and that's where the trust comes in of trusting that I trust if I take this one step at a time it's going to unfold.
Totally.
And so for somebody who's struggling with that and they say yeah cool that sounds wonderful and great trust how do I trust what would you say to them?
I would say, you know, you have to reduce it down to the next step that feels doable. So, like, this is a thing with trust. It's like you can try if you said, "Okay, girl, like you are going out with a camera and you're now in charge of like the city's communications and you're just gonna like, you know, take it all on." I'd be so overwhelmed. I wouldn't even know where to start. And I would, you know, I'd figure it out slowly. But it's again, it's like, what's the next step that's in front of you? Like, what is the next achievable thing? I heard this like awesome I think it was like, you know, James Clear who did the Atomic Habits book.
Mhm.
He was on an interview, I think it might have been Huberman Lab or something, but he was, you know, he was just talking about how like he had this client who was trying to get fit, right? And it's like for him, the hard part was, like, packing the bag and getting to the car and, like, arriving at the gym, and he literally just focused on that for weeks on end until it's like, "Okay, well, I guess I'm here. I better maybe I'll try an activity of some sort." And I just thought that was so profound because I was like, yeah, there's this thing that we do cognitively where, you know, we're about to approach a task that feels huge. It's like maybe you've been thinking you wanted to start a business for your whole life, and you're like, "How do I even approach this mountain of starting business?" It's like, well, you don't just like create the business and start like like selling your stuff tomorrow.
Oh,
You
yeah.
know, maybe you just need to learn how to pack your gym bag, so that you're dealing with you're not bypassing the cognitive, load that it is just trying to figure out what it looks like logistically to make sure you have clean gym clothes, that you have shoes, that you've planned a snack, that you have your water bottle, like all of these things. You didn't realize those were all cognitive barriers to you getting in your car and going to the gym, right? And the same thing with starting a business. It's like, okay, if there's a starting point, how do you reduce it to just like this little unit you trust yourself with? And then do that repetitively, even if it's just opening your laptop, opening up your, URL that you bought and just sitting with it and being like, I've arrived to work on my business. And now I'll close my laptop and tomorrow we'll try again. Like if it is that small, at least every single day you're showing up, you're starting to show yourself, you trust yourself to open the laptop and be present with your business. Then you're like, well, since I'm here, maybe I'll build one page of that
Mhm.
website. Since I'm here, maybe I'll build the about me page today. And so, yeah, like just reduce it. Like there's no step that's too small for you to make a thing that you're practicing.
Yeah,
Practice it till you nail it and then move on to the next thing. And you might nail it real fast. Great, good for you. But then there is going to be one you're stalled on and you're like, wow, okay, I need to practice this over and over. I need to get familiar with this and start trusting myself to be able to handle the pressure of this. And then just keep going, you know? Just keep
absolutely.
going. Never stop going.
Keep going. And so I know we've mentioned Vipassana a couple of times, and I would love for you, well, number one, explain to the listeners what it is if they have never heard of this before. And number two, I would love to hear, and I would love for the audience to hear some of your takeaways from this event that you did.
Well, Vipassana is a meditation practice that it was handed down by the Buddha, and it's part of Buddhism. It's like an aspect of Buddhism, but it's sort of non-sectarian. It's not religious. And so it's a practice, but it's offered as a teaching that can be a number of days in a row. So I did a 10-day Vipassana sit where you're in meditation for like 14 hours a day. It's completely silent. Your phone is nowhere to be found. Like you have to like surrender your phone going in. So you don't have any reading material, any music, any stimulation beyond being with your own mind. Um, you're in a cohort of people, but you don't make eye contact and you don't gesture. You're meant to really cultivate an inner awareness during this time. And yeah, there's mandatory sits throughout the day where you're in the group meditation hall, and then options for you to meditate in your room or in the hall as you wish, but it's full on. It is so full on, but it's an incredible practice because Vipassana gets you connecting your mind to your body. It gets you exploring physical sensation as a function of your mind meeting a place in your body, on your body, within your body. And it's led, if you go through um, the organization where you're sitting with Goenka is the teacher. He's passed away, but they have these recordings of him. And every night you get some teaching from him, and it's just absolutely incredible. It's life-changing because it gives you such a sense of presence, and you learn a lot about craving and aversion and just how, we create so much suffering from ourselves within ourselves by either wanting to have less and, avoiding discomfort or wanting to have more of the good that's there. So you have a little taste of something good and you're like, I want more. I need more. How can I make this last? How can I make this last forever? So a big piece of Vipassana is learning about impermanence, and it's the most beautiful thing. It's just the most beautiful thing to tune in to an understanding that everything is always changing. This too will pass away, and you are using your mind to witness this phenomenon within your body. You're using your mind to witness that you are of that physical nature of the universe, that it is always changing. You are always changing. It's so beautiful. Like, I came out of Vipassana, like, completely aware that of my points of suffering, like
Mhm.
how I suffer in this life, and a lot of it is actually just trying to make the good times last. Surprisingly, like you think it would be like I want to avoid pain at all costs, but for me, it's like so much of my suffering comes from wanting the good to stay forever. It's like, oh,
Mhm.
this is so good. Can it never leave? Like, I don't want it to leave. And that's a kind of suffering that makes it really hard for you to receive what's there and, like, let it land when it is good?
Yeah. Not wanting to grip and hold on to it and
Yeah.
almost like control it in a sense too. Like, if I grip hard enough, this will stay.
Yeah.
And so coming out of that experience, do you think that helped lead you to stepping into this power and starting to create your own thing? Did that give you some clarity on what it was that you really were calling in next?
Yeah, I think what it did was it gave me this roadmap. Like, I knew I was missing kind of a framework for my own addressing my own habit patterns of my mind, right? Like, every one of us has these habit patterns of mind where we return to and replay and, like, regurgitate past, in this tradition, it's called sankharas, these sort of points of formation where you've formed an attitude about a sensation that you've
Mhm.
had. And we replay these old sankharas and they kind of keep coming up and they keep informing our reality and coloring the way that we see the world around us. And when you start to play with the ideas and teachings in Vipassana, you start to really see that if you can practice presence and equanimity, if you can practice being okay with whatever arrives, knowing and trusting the nature that everything always passes away, then you can have this experience of, like, let's just bring it back to starting a new venture. You have fear rise up. Well, in Vipassana, you don't turn the fear away. You don't push it away. You don't indulge it. You look at it and you go, fear, okay, sensation in the body. Like, I'm not going to react to it because what I know, a fundamental truth of this universe is that it too will pass away. So the fear will rise, but it is a certainty, a law of the universe that that fear will dissipate eventually. So you can sit with it. Like, Vipassana teaches you to look at that fear and go, I trust that you will go. So
Mhm.
because of that, you can stay, like, and you can just be there while I do other things. um,
Right.
so yeah, like, that's profound. And the practice of it is so ongoing. Like, I practice Vipassana really often in my life, probably not as often as I wish I could practice it every day, but I am practicing as much as I possibly can because the wisdom of it does help me approach these moments of, like, contraction, these moments where I wanna, like, turn away from the intensity of, like, fear that's there, right?
Mhm.
Yeah.
Particularly when so you mentioned that we're all basically running these stories of things that have happened in our past, these samskaras, and that they do kind of run whatever is happening in the present moment. And are
Yeah.
there tools of being able to release those old patterns and stories and beliefs so that we don't bring them into our future ventures?
Yeah, well, one thing that comes out, this is probably one of the most beautiful things that I learned in Vipassana, is that, like, the thinking in within the tradition is that if you don't form new sankharas, the body pulls up old ones, and as long as you don't react to them and form new sankharas, like, you know how you have a thought or a memory that comes up and you're like, "Ooh,
Yes.
no, 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 I don't wanna think about," like, we react to our own memories, like, our own recreations of these things, right? And so in the tradition, they say, like, if something comes up and you stop forming new sankharas, you stop reacting, you stop continuing on this pattern, and you just deal with it with equanimity and you allow it to pass away, it will just pass away. It won't continue to haunt your life. It won't continue. And it takes some serious work to not form new sankharas about old things. Like, we all
Mhm.
have that experience of, like, oh, cringe, that thing I did, and you're already reacting to it before you even have a chance to decide you don't want to react to it. But I love how beautiful this is and the wisdom in it, because it's like the way that they explain it in the course as well is like, if you stop eating, if we just stopped eating right now, our body wouldn't just keel over and die, right? What would happen is like our body would start to use what's there to like survive, right? And it's the same thing with the mind in this tradition, in this context. It's like if we don't feed the mind new stuff to react to, it has no choice. Like it will just try to pull up like gunk basically that's there and try to feed you new things. And if you continue not to, it has nowhere to go. It just has to pass away. So it works in that same way of the body, like processing, and just it will start to eat itself essentially, right? And so, yeah, I love that. So there's hope for these automatic things, these traumas that we've been through. If we cultivate a sense of presence with it, and if we cultivate that feeling of equanimity, that we can actually just allow them to pass away and carry on with our lives, But it does take some serious effort to sit with like the very activating things that come up and be like, I allow. I allow.
Right. I trust you two will pass.
Yeah, exactly.
Oh, man.
It's so funny, equanimity. I'm like, we could, during Vipassana, you could go for these forest walks, right? And so I was like, trying to get outside as much as I could. And you're so understimulated by like modern standards that things just start to become miraculous. Like I saw a little spider web blowing around, carrying little droplets of water, and I was just transfixed. It was like the most entertainment I'd had all day. And, so I was trying to get outside a lot, and I was walking around in the forest at night, and it was like pitch black. It was just so dark, and I walk in the forest and I hear this snap, this twig snap. And I was like, equanimity, 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 like trying to like run back on this path, and I'm just like, don't react. I was like terrified. I was like, oh gosh, a cougar is gonna get me. This is not good. It's hard to stop yourself from having like, fear-based reactions, but it is possible.
Absolutely.
And with practice, people do, even in intense potential cougar attacks, stay quite unreactive and calm and allow these emotions to be there without reacting, which I think is phenomenal. Like there's such a profound beauty to the nature of people that are practicing this as a part like of what they've chosen to do with their purpose here.
Mhm.
It's just gorgeous. Yeah, it's beautiful.
That is profound, because we are taught to just act instantaneously, and our modern environment has just deepened that greatly with instant gratification. Everything you want, you can have in a moment. And so being able to disconnect and feel everything that comes up in your body and just feel it before reacting is honestly almost a superpower. So,
It's something to practice. I'm telling you, that is. I want to do another Vipassana sit, because there's no other scenario where you are so able to practice. Like they really set you up to have no interference in the practice, and you're there. It's such an opportunity. When in our lives do we get to just like throw our phone out the window for 10 days, and just be present with ourselves? Like that's such a gift in these modern times. Coming back into the world after Vipassana was like a shell shock. I was in a coffee shop and it felt like everything was going in slow motion, and I really got the sense of how the perception of time is a creation of our own making. Like the urgency. I was like completely drained of all need to respond quickly and react really quickly. And I just felt so able to be with this customer service person that was asking me what I wanted to have. I was just like full of love and light. I was going slowly, and I was able to be really present. And man, the transition back into the real world of like phone, notification, this, that, like, getting calls, my partner asking me what's for dinner, like, just life And I
Yeah.
was like, wow, like I'm back in immediate reactions, having like
Yeah.
freakouts, talking about, politics, like, grr. It's just like, wow, where did the peace go? I was like Zen. I was a Zen master for 10 days. But yeah,
It's noisy out there, and we are bombarded by so much information
yeah,
at once that it does make it a bit harder to tune in to your own self and listen to your body's information and taking it back to the fizz, the sparkle, like
yeah,
listening to your own body can be harder when we are bombarded by so many things, and it's finding that balance of acknowledging all of that and then tuning back into yourself. And
yeah.
so I would love for you, with the time we have left, if there are any more stories that are on your heart, if there's any knowledge you'd like to share, if there's any advice, whatever it is that wants to come up for you right now, I'd love for you to give that to us.
Oh my goodness. I'm just like, I just have a lot of like love for people out there just making it work and trying to figure out who they are and build that sense of well-being within themselves that they're worth it and worthwhile. I guess the one thing that I just wish people tuned into or really really embodied and felt was that no one can define you. Like no one can hand you the definition of what you are. Like, you get to decide that. You're the permission giver of your life, and you are the creator of your story. So, like, you may walk into rooms like, I've taken really big roles where I've had a lot of clout and a lot of like trust that I'm going to be the leader. And like, then take in roles where I'm someone's assistant, you know what I mean? And that I'm looked at like somebody that doesn't really have skills. And I think in these environments, it's like in the world we're living in, people kind of want to be able to define you by whatever current job you're holding, but that's not where your story gets written. Like that's just like one context of who
Mhm.
you are and how you participate in this world. And if there's just one thing that I wish people were telling themselves frequently and often, it's that you know, I'm the permission giver of my life. I'm the one that says yes or no. I'm the one that decides what my story is and how it's told. I get to be as complicated and nuanced as I want. And like, I will define the contexts in which I share this information with people. Internal to external, we talked about that a lot in the groups that we've been in together, but it has become like a battle cry of mine. It's like, internal to external, how do I feel about this? Like a lot of time we walk in and we're take a job interview, for example, you go in for a job interview and you're like, okay, I'm here to prove to you that I'm valuable.
Mm.
But actually, if you walk into a job interview and you make the point of you being there to decide if this is a situation that's in alignment with you, you're gonna ace that job interview. Like, if you go in trying to convince someone why you're valuable, you will come in with an energy of, like, trying to convince. But if you walk in with the energy of trying to figure out if this is gonna work, you walk in with curiosity, you walk in with internal energy to external, right? And that makes all the difference. And it gives you a task to follow. The you disappears because you have a goal, you have an objective, and that objective isn't to project yourself as being something or someone important. The goal is for you to determine if this is actually going to work for you, and that makes you powerful. Every time you're working internal to external, you are so powerful. It's almost intimidating to people, but it's so easy to walk out in the world and be like, okay, okay, how am I going to act so that people believe I'm this? Give yourself objectives. That's what I would say. Give yourself objectives. It's it's so important. And when you're working from that place, like people just want you to have it. They want you to have what you want because of that power, I think. It's attractive.
Mhm.
It's really attractive. So,
It
yeah.
is. I think that was some of the most incredible advice we could have ever ended this conversation on. Truly, like, I think that's gonna help a lot of people, and just realizing that you do have that power and you are capable beyond your wildest belief. You are so capable at any moment to choose differently, to act differently, and to decide for yourself what it is that you want your freaking life to be.
Yeah.
So
Consult
thank
yourself,
you.
consult your inner,
So,
consult your inner voice and just be like, "What do we want right now? Like, how do we feel about this? Do we like this?"
mhm.
And notice all that liking because it amounts to purpose. It really does. Those are the building blocks to, like, really understanding what makes you tick, what makes you spark, you know?
Yes, I love that.
Yeah.
Follow your fizz. What
Follow
lights you
your
up?
fizz.
Oh, this has been such a beautiful conversation. I literally could listen to you speak all day.
Oh my gosh, it's so fun, Rachel, I love it. I'm so
And
glad we
we
got
are
to do this.
so excited for what you're creating. And
Thank
so,
you.
in the show notes below, I will put links for people to connect with you. Maybe
Cool.
you have some really amazing community stories that you could share with Marie and give her some ideas.
Yeah.
And yeah, thank you so much.
I love that. Okay, thanks so much.
If you're feeling called to recreate your life in 2026 and not do it alone, I want to invite you into the Rise and Recreate portal. It's a community for people who are ready to release old patterns, reconnect to themselves, and consciously create what's next. Inside, we gather for guided ceremonies where we set intentions, we rewire our subconscious, and we have honest conversations all designed to help you trust yourself, take aligned action, and actually build a life that feels like yours. Right now, you can join for half off your first month, so it's the perfect time to step in, get supported, and recreate your life alongside people who truly get it. You'll find the link below, and I would love to see you in there.